All right, welcome everyone to tonight's call. We're going to go over 2022 in review, kind of like what the year looked like, some feedback that we got, and then also go through some 2023 announcements. We'll have some changes as well as announcing the 2023 schedule, which is super exciting. If you're not familiar with me, I'm Sean Warren. I'm the Executive Director for Michigan Scholastic Cycling Association, overseeing the day-to-day operations throughout the year of MiSCA, and then also acting as the race director on race day and throughout the year for race day planning. The agenda for tonight, we're going to go through the mission of MiSCA very quickly. And then again, what I just talked about, go a recap of the year, feedback that we received, changes for next year, and then the calendar, as well as leave some time at the end for additional Q&A. It'd be really nice if we can leave the Q&A until the end, even if it's related to something we're talking about on the screen. Just because some of the feedback might elicit conversation or questions, and same thing with the calendar. Maybe there will be something that pops up on the calendar that you have a question about, but let's try to save that till the end. You can, of course, put questions in the chat box, and I know that Sarah and maybe some other staff members are on the call that can monitor the chat while I'm talking, and you might get a quicker answer that way if you don't want to wait until the end. Otherwise, I'll go through the chat at the end of the call and just make sure that all of the questions were answered. So real quick, the mission of MiSCA, if you're not familiar or you don't remember it by heart, as I don't remember it by heart either, but basically we're here to empower communities to develop and grow K through 12 youth mountain biking programs. We're a 501c3 nonprofit organization recognized by the IRS as being a nonprofit. And we instill confidence by promoting the values of an active lifestyle, healthy competition, and outdoor stewardship and adventure while building lifelong friendships in an inclusive environment. So our mission is a lot more than putting on cool races. It's about getting kids on bikes and introduced to the sport that wouldn't have otherwise found it, and to do so in an environment that welcomes them to the sport. So a little bit about what happened this year. We had 1,139 students join MiSCA. They signed up for teams or they were independent. Let me just move some stuff around here. So that did give us another year of growth. We had, again, 1,100 kids, and they were supported by over 500 coaches. And we averaged 570 kids racing on each weekend. That is down a little bit from last year, about 10%. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in the next couple of slides. But I first just wanted to break down the participation numbers a bit. So again, we had 525 coaches participating this past year. That's up from 420 in the previous year, which is awesome growth. Each of these coaches definitely did a background check, and they should have all been through their concussion and ride leader training as well. We rolled out new coaching curriculum this year, and we were able to get 159 coaches through some sort of that curriculum, whether it was the essentials or the intermediate course. I think even some had done the advanced course, which was really cool to be able to roll out that new programming. And then we also operated the 6 races throughout the state. So a quick breakdown of kind of the student membership. I think this might be the first year that elementary is our largest age group participating in MiSCA with 451 kids. Of course, elementary does have like 6 grades in it. So it's the biggest, also the biggest age bracket that we have participating. Middle schoolers were 296 students, a pretty strong number considering it's only 3 grades, 6, 7, and 8. And then high school, we had 396 kids for high school. Of that, 27% were female, which is a really good number for us as well. Generally, I think last year we were around 27% as well. But anywhere getting close to 30 is a really good goal for us. All right, and then a quick breakdown for kind of the history of our growth. Since 2017, MiSCA has been growing strong. The pandemic really accelerated that growth and seems to have kind of plateaued in 2022. In the chart, you can kind of tell that we definitely had more kids and coaches signed up in 2022 than in 2021. but on average, fewer students participated in races than in the past year. We've ran, lots of metrics on that about, what we're seeing. And a really quick one that stood out was that roughly 60 fewer riders actually signed up for the full series pass early in the year, where you get all 6 races. And that was about a 10%, that represents about a 10% reduction in overall race participation. So I know that correlation doesn't equal causation, but real quickly, if we had 60 more kids sign up for the entire series like they did last year, we would have been basically even for this year. And there's a lot of reasons for that, we think. The first one is really that other sports opened up this year with the absence of COVID restrictions in the state. Even in 2021, if you guys remember that far back, there was state mandated testing in the spring and early summer for youth sports. And so that even for us, but other sports were still not operating fully in 2021. And there was some fear, in 2021 as well, that MiSCA could fill up again. We did have some caps in 2021, and it was a single day race. And so we had to maintain a smaller footprint just to be able to have a race on one day. So there was a little bit more of a eagerness to get in before there were any closures or anything like that. But yeah, let's see. So in 2022, without that incentive to really get signed up early, it gave families more time to get on waiting lists and to see what other sports were open and see what schedules fit with their calendar, which gave them more opportunity to not do MiSCA, which is okay. If they chose other things over MiSCA, it's as long as they're participating in sports, that would be great. And then our venues in 2022 were pretty scattered out throughout the state. And two or three of our races were kind of outliers to a lot of the population, which is another thing that can, hamper, what you wanted to sign up for every single race. The 2-day schedule could have impacted participation as well. We have some feedback on that I'll talk about in the feedback slides. Particularly the 2-day race isn't great for families that have kids on both days. It's not so bad if you only have to be there one day. It's a shorter day, and that's better for you. But I think traditionally in MiSCA, we have coaches that are there on both days. And then some parents are straddling both days with kids who are elementary and the older ages. Some families had to choose which kid was going to participate because they could only do one day, or Saturdays or Sundays didn't work for their schedule. So they had to, only choose one kid to participate. So that definitely could have impacted some of our numbers. And then finally, I mentioned that, with so many of the races kind of being away and spread out, it required a lot more travel on behalf of the families. So not just like gas being crazy high, but hotels were either hard to book or very expensive if you could find one. And just everything was more expensive in 2022 than it was even in 2021 with inflation. So that doesn't help, when you're all these things combined, it doesn't help to make events more popular. So some feedback that we received from our surveys. First, I'll just kind of go through the quick open feedback, which is, it's generally going to be just a few negative points that I'll just run through real quick. And then I'm actually going to show you kind of a summary of some of the survey results that go by the questions. And I can talk through some of that, maybe why we're seeing that, or some answers to questions that we got on the surveys. So in the kind of the open-ended comments that people can write in, we definitely were seeing similar themes from multiple people. So the 2-day races can be tough on families and coaches. The venues were far from home. Elementary categories are too large, which is unfair for younger kids. So if you're a kindergartner going against the 3rd grader, that age range might not be quite fair, or the category is just huge, right? There's 50 kids in it, and it's really hard to podium in that category. Elementary categories also were starting at the hottest time of the day on Saturdays. And then there was some items there about long staging times. So I'm actually going to work my way from bottom up. So long staging times, we addressed it kind of in the middle of the year because we kept on seeing that coming up. And we changed the staging time that people should arrive to hopefully be 15 minutes before their start time, as opposed to 15 minutes before the wave start time. If that makes any sense, or if it doesn't, basically, let's say varsity category. So varsity male, they start at 9 a.m. and then we had everybody come in at 8:45. So varsity girls, advanced middle school boys and girls also all came at 8:45 for staging. And that means by the time we get to advanced middle school girls, they've been waiting for about a half hour, 25 minutes for their ride to start, which isn't fair to them to have to wait around an extra 10 minutes just because everyone else is starting in front of them. So we adjusted that in the middle of the year based on the feedback. And we do look at the survey results throughout the year and make adjustments where we can. A lot of things we can't change ad hoc, right? Like we can't go from 2-day races to 1-day races in the middle of the year because the schedule is published and it's not possible. And we also can't add categories or really change start times drastically. So the next one is elementary categories started at the hottest time of the day. We basically took the schedule from 2021 and made it on Saturday for 2022 for elementary. So most elementary categories started between 2 and 5 o'clock or maybe 1 and 5 o'clock in 2021. And that's pretty much what it carried over to for 2022. I do know that, particularly at mid-Michigan, it was on pavement, blacktop. And so it was a very hot start with very hot team tent areas in the late afternoon for our first race, which is in the summer versus it being in the fall. So definitely understand that concern. At the same time, we can't start the races too much earlier. Definitely can't start them at 9 a.m. like varsity because we have to set the course on Saturday morning. We don't have a staff coming in on Friday to be able to mark the courses. So in order to give us enough time to mark the courses, we have to start in the afternoon on Saturday. And hopefully by the end of the year, you appreciated starting later in the day because it was getting cold in the morning. And then you got warmer starts in the afternoon when it was a little bit nicer out in October races. But that's probably not going to change. Unfortunately, that's just our time frame that we have to work with. The elementary categories being too large. There will be a change to this for 2023. I wish we could have done it this year. But in the middle of the year, you can't make changes, even though to us it was obvious too that the categories are very large. So we'll announce some changes to elementary category breakdowns later on in the presentation. Venues being far from home, we agreed with that as well. There's many things that go into venue selection. One of them is trying to get new venues into the mix or venues we haven't been to in a while. Another is working with venues that are easy to work with. And some of these ones that were pretty far away made it very easy for us to come do a race there. And when they can remove all these barriers to entry for us to be able to participate, it looks really attractive. And so we're trying to limit, how much we're going with the easy one versus the ones that make sense more for our population and our schedule. So you'll see on the schedule for this year, it should be a little bit better and more familiar to what you've seen in years past. And then the 2-day races being tough on families. So yes, I do understand that this is a problem. We as a staff had to kind of change our lives as well to make it to be there on both days for full days. And it is it wasn't an easy decision to make. And for us, we have
Are we muted or unmute?
Salvatore, you are unmuted. There you go. So the 2-day races, we've looked at options for how to make it a 1-day race. And really, if we had a 1-day race, we have to limit participation. And so that might not seem like a big deal for 2022 numbers because we were down. But with all the reasons why we might have been down a little bit in 2022, we don't anticipate being down again in 2023. Or even if we're maintaining where we were at in 2021, a single-day race was very hard to operate. And was actually more stressful on staff and volunteers than what it was in 2022, even though we kind of thought it would be the other way around. So again, without totally eliminating a large group of participants, without finding trail systems that don't exist, we just don't have the space to have these very large events at these venues and to fit enough kids on the trail at a time to be able to do it in 1 day. and to be able to serve as many kids as we're serving now. So for 2023, there's not a change to the 2-day format. It'll still be a 2-day format for next year. And we will be reevaluating that next year. But we feel like we do need one more year of data to show us what we need to do. If we're flat again, then maybe we can look at the schedule and say, okay, well, maybe we can start an hour earlier on Saturday or on Sunday. But I don't know. And it's a board decision really that we work with them to figure out what the priorities are, who do we want to serve when and where, and what are we willing to give up in order to, do it on one day if it's possible. So we're still looking at it, and I wouldn't say anything set in stone, but for 2023, we are moving forward with the 2-day races in the same format of 2022. So let me move over to some of the survey results. So you should still be able to see my screen. If anybody can't see my screen, I'm scrolling it. If someone just lets me know if they can't see it, then they'll stop talking, and that should be good. And it's on my other screen, so sorry, I'm going to be looking over here if you can see me. So let's see if I can get that off. Okay, so I'm going to try to do it really quickly, a breakdown of the different results that we got, and I'll just talk probably about some of the negative things. But in general, overall, our survey results are generally very positive. I like to say, if you can get a majority of this country to agree on something, like even imagine 75% of the country agreeing on something being the right thing to do, imagine what we could do or what would happen. And generally, our survey results are very positive, very favorable. And we generally focus on the negative things because those are the things that we can maybe fix or adapt to make it even better. But overall, the results are quite positive. Were you well informed of course location and layout? So most of those were all positive. Lakeshore Park actually had the most negative one, which I thought was interesting. And nothing really came up too much in the survey results on that. The bigger one with that, I think, was maybe they're related. I'm noticing it right now as I say it. Is that we got feedback on for the next one, which is course map, GPX, detailed and useful. The Lakeshore Park GPX file and map was hard to follow because it's an urban trail, and we have there's 2 different trails running together. And so sometimes it's hard to tell where to turn and what course you're on if you're looking at the map. And I think there was one part of the GPX that had a mistake in it, actually. So I can see how that result might have been the lowest one out of all the races, even though it's one that probably the majority of people ride more often than some of the other courses that we had. And you can see that was the one that had the highest negative rating for the GPX and map files being useful as well. So that's something we're going to continue to work on. Hopefully we can get those out earlier this year than we did, or next year than we did this year. I know with like Merrill, we just didn't have a good OpenStreetMaps available because they had just remodeled that course. And so that was one of the ones that we had kind of wait on or didn't have a GPX file at all for. Technical challenges appropriate to my skill level. The one that got the biggest negative on this was Mid-Michigan. And our feedback on that was generally that the course wasn't worth the drive. It was a rather simple course and more flat, and it wasn't that challenging, right? It's a good for a series opener, and it was probably good for a time trial format, but maybe not, the most exciting course to be at. Sufficient opportunity to pre-ride the course. These ones we actually got from reading open-ended results. We did get some feedback that it's hard to pre-ride with the 2-day race, right? So the feedback is generally still positive that they had enough opportunity to pre-ride the courses. Owassipee had the lowest one. In general, for people in Southeast Michigan, it's a pretty good drive to go to Owassipee. And that trail system is closed in June and July, which limited the amount of time that people could pre-ride it. So that was one of the reasons why we felt that one had the lower rating there. And then Mid-Michigan, another one, is just far from home, I think, for a lot of people. So I think, the map was published early enough, but maybe there wasn't an opportunity to get out there and ride it ahead of time because it was the first race as well. So it had the lowest amount of time that you could get out there. Easily followed the course. So this would be like during the race, easily followed the course. And all of those are above 90%. Adequate restrooms. So basically all of the ones where you see a red mark are ones where we had porta-johns instead of flushable toilets, or where they were the primary bathroom facility available. And I put adequate restrooms here. In the question, it does mention hand washing stations as well. And that's that was a leftover wording from previous surveys that we've had. And we didn't do hand washing stations for the past 2 years. We've had challenges with the hand washing stations and they just haven't really been worth it. So we tried to make sure that there's extra sanitizer available. And I understand that sanitizer isn't the most cleanly thing to do when washing your hands or when you want to wash your hands. But we're really limited with what we can do with the hand washing stations and how many we would need, and how to get them to be adequate for the amount of people that are using them is a challenge that we have yet to overcome. Spectators were positive, was generally a positive response. And would you enjoy the venue again? So the 3 that got our low marks on that were Lakeshore Park, Mid-Michigan, and Owassipee. And I'll kind of leave that for the open comments when I start reading through those, that you can kind of see why that was the case. And people on the call probably maybe know why they had those feelings about those as well. So Bloomer Park generally got favorable feedback. No, in the open-ended comments, the restrooms were one of the things that were mentioned because one of the girls' door locks were broken. The course not being challenging, we have to do pretty much short course there with a lot of laps. And so I know that the advanced course is pretty challenging when it comes to climbing, but the beginner course isn't as difficult as some of our other courses are. For heritage, restrooms was the #1 negative feedback. Far from home was mentioned at least once, but I know it was mentioned on other things as well. When it came to Lakeshore Park, inadequate parking was the #1 response, and we experienced that too. And we thought we had prepared for it enough and communicated that we wanted carpooling to happen and whatnot, but we can't always expect that to happen, and it didn't happen as much as we needed it to avoid some of that. So I'll talk about that a little bit more later. And then the course not being challenging was one of the other ones. In the length, when we get to that, there was some other things that came up with Lakeshore Park on the lap lengths and how long the course was as well. So I'll save that for that part. But I think parking was the biggest challenge, how congested that trail system was, or how congested the venue was on race day. Merrill was generally positive feedback. So again, nothing really big to note there. Mid-Michigan being far from home. Was this? Oh, it was heritage. Okay. Sorry, when I said heritage, I was thinking I was talking about Mid-Michigan. So that's why I mentioned far from home, but heritage actually doesn't have that big of a problem there. Mid-Michigan was the one that far from home was one of the bigger ones that came up, tied with restrooms being porta-johns. And then the course not being challenging was the #1 feedback that we got in the open-ended survey results for Mid-Michigan. And then Owassipee, there was a lot of mentions of sand, sandy downhills, or a downhill with a sandy bottom. Let's see. And then, yeah, being far from home. Those are the 2 biggest things there, was the sand and it being far. When it came to the length of the courses, I'll just mention Lakeshore Park real quick, just one more time, because I was just talking about it. But for Lakeshore, the course length was too long for advanced and too short for beginner, which created a still not a majority negative experience, but there was a higher rate of those not being in alignment, right? So we do have, we're working that out. And again, I can talk about that more in a little bit. And let's see what else came up. So Bloomer, we know the laps are really short there. And then that kind of made the overall race short at Bloomer. I think elementary in general has a pretty short race at Bloomer, which helps to hit that number and make that number so low. Let's see. And then Owassapee, the laps were long for advanced, and which made the course long as well. And the time at the venue being also long. So generally, if the course is long, everything kind of gets long by default. So that's the general feedback that we got from the survey results. Let's see if I can get my slideshow back. Here we go. And again, if you have questions or comments, you can put them in the chat, and then we'll talk about them in the Q&A, just to make sure that you're, I'm not just moving on. I'll do a Q&A soon enough. All right, so moving on to changes for 2023. First, I'll just say it's nothing crazy. There's no crazy changes happening, mostly status quo, and all positive things are going down. So I'll start with Xandra. So sorry, I lost my notes, and I want to make sure I hit my things I needed to make sure I talk about. So, oh gosh, I lost it again. Sorry, one moment. Okay, this is, gotta love PowerPoint. Okay, so first I want to announce Xandra is going to be taking over as our race program director, and she is on the call as well. I'll let her introduce herself in just a moment. But Xandra has been part of the race staff for the past few years, and will be stepping into the race program director role for the upcoming season. This role I did in tandem with my executive director position. So throughout the year, I would be working on the organizational stuff, whether it was non-race related, working through registration issues, fundraising and marketing, and all the stuff that goes into running the whole nonprofit. So it could be finance related, just everything. And in addition to the organization stuff, also preparing for the race season, and doing that cadence. And once you hit summer, it's basically all race season because there's so much to do. So separating this out into two separate people and two separate roles is going to be awesome for not just me and the organization, but for everybody else as well, because hopefully we should be able to focus on doing more and making things really cool. So let me see if I forgot anything, because I didn't read through my notes after I said I was going to. So yeah, I'll be supporting Xandra through the transition. So I'm still going to be the executive director for MiSCA. And I plan on being at all the races as well in 2023. So the transition should be really smooth, and I'll still be there. I'll still be around, and my email is not changing. So if you're used to emailing me, you can still email me. But just know I might forward it to Xandra and let you know. So Xandra's on the call. Let her introduce herself real quick. Xandra, if you could just give folks a bit about your background and maybe why you wanted to take on the role. I know I didn't prep you for that. And I'm asking you to unmute, so you might get a button that says to do that.
Hi, everyone. Excuse me. I was very excited to have this as an opportunity. I've been a race director in the past for some adventure racing, and this just kind of falls in line with how awesome MiSCA is and my role on staff the past couple of years. It's going to be a great opportunity for Sean to focus on things and how he can help support MiSCA in different ways, and then have someone dedicated as the race program director for the race weekends. So I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Thank you, Xandra. Next up is we're adding a new role for a safety and risk management director. So this will be a year-round position. And Jason Whiteson is going to be taking on that role. He has a degree in emergency disaster management. He's a certified EMT paramedic. He's worked with a lot of EMS companies that we've worked with in the past, including Star EMS, Community EMS, Superior, and he currently actually works with Livingston County EMS as in a part-time role. He was also an emergency room paramedic, so he has a lot of experience in dealing with emergencies. and handling that in a calm, professional manner. And he has the correct education to be able to really provide care. He's also going to evaluate our current risk management policies and training. He will be confirming coach requirement submissions and following up with non-compliant coaches and teams. So part of risk management is making sure that our coaches are all trained and ready to work with our kids. And so we want to make sure that we are holding those coaches accountable to making sure they're hitting those requirements. And we'll be doing more reporting and more follow-up on that in the coming year. And then on race day, he'll be taking the lead from a safety perspective, coordinating the volunteer marshals and then our emergency response. Greg Koenig has been a longtime coach, and he helped MiSCA this year facilitate coach clinics. And he's going to be stepping in as our coach education coordinator. We haven't had this role in a couple of years, but we thought it was really important to bring it back because we invested heavily in our new training program for our coaches. And we want to make sure that we're evolving it slightly year over year to make sure it fits our needs and that it stays fresh. And we also want to make sure that we're providing continuing education to our coach facilitators. So the ones who are actually providing the coach training, we want to make sure that they are upping their skills every year as well, and at least working together to develop, what the programming should look like and how things are working at the clinics. Greg's also going to help us coordinate schedules, so to come up with a good clinic schedule for the year based on all of the different facilitators' availability. This one is a pretty exciting one. We definitely heard in the survey results that elementary categories are too large, and I couldn't agree more. It was obvious when you looked at them how big the categories were. So we're actually adding 4 additional elementary categories. So now there will be 10 elementary categories just for elementary. We're going to do that by splitting upper into 4th and 5th grade separately, and then splitting lower in half as well. So there will be a group for 1st grade and under, and then a group for 2nd and 3rd graders. And we're doing this equally between boys and girls. So there will be the same exact category for boys as girls in the elementary categories still. If the boys continue to grow, then we may split the boys down one more level lower for the lower elementary, or find a different way to break up the categories a little bit more. No changes for advanced elementary announced. And then I would just say that we did get feedback too, and we know it happens where maybe the girls get stuck, faster girls get stuck behind the slower boys in the previous group. So we're looking at ways that we can reshuffle things given that we're adding more categories. Hopefully, with the grade breakdowns being a little bit more granular, if we do 5th grade boys, 5th grade girls, you're less likely to get stuck behind a slower 4th grade boy at least. And it's more helpful probably in lower elementary where, a 3rd grade girl who might be fast isn't getting stuck behind a kindergartner boy who might be pretty slow. And that's just very generalized, going by ages and not by skills. But you can see how that could happen. So we're looking at ways of shuffling that out. Like maybe we'll do all the boys together and all the girls together like we do with middle school. I don't know if that's what we would do, but that's a possibility. And again, if we do it with having this many grade breakdowns, hopefully you're not getting, kids aren't getting as stuck behind, the slower riders in the previous group. It's going to happen with, trying to get as many kids through a race day as we do, where it's not always going to be a clear course for everybody. But, we're trying to minimize that as much as we can, given that we've heard the feedback and we want everyone to have a good experience. So. Next up, given our financial status at the end of the race season this year and our need to solicit for donations, we have made the difficult decision to increase our rates for 2023. I'm confident that that'll leave us in a good position and it'll maintain the sustainability of the race series. So we won't have to come begging for money at the end of the year. I will say, I meant to mention it in the 2022 results, actually, that we did hit our goal for our fundraising initiative for Q4. So thank you guys so much for stepping up and helping to fill that hole that our projections left us. And we're good to go for the next year. Everything's looking really good for our budget, and we have cash on hand to pay our bills in the first quarter, where we don't generally have a whole lot of cash flow coming in. So that's really good. And I couldn't thank you guys any more than for what you've done, and for stepping up for giving us those donations to help us fill that hole for this year. So with that, again, we feel like this pricing model will help us to maintain that we can pay our bills for running a race series that's as professional as what we do, having more staff attributed to that, and do what we do well. We do feel that our fees are still much lower than other youth programs. So I know I have a 6-year-old, and so he goes to, whether it's Lego League or gymnastics or T-ball or whatever that we've been doing with him. So I see those costs firsthand from the lowest level beginner getting into the sport, participating in other leagues. And I would say that MiSCA is cheaper than anything else that we've ever put him in. And I know that our fees are not the only cost of mountain biking for a family, especially if you're on a team. There might be team fees and jerseys and a bike and helmets and shoes that they grow out of and all that stuff. And so I definitely understand that MiSCA isn't the only thing people are paying to participate. And so we are still focused on keeping our costs low. And it's one reason why our discount structure is set up in a way that really incentivizes participation and people who are participating in all of it, right? So I'll run through kind of like what those changes might look like a little bit later, but the total cost to participate in MiSCA is still rather low for a high schooler. If you pay the annual fee and you do all 6 races, and it's not your first year, so you've been doing it for a few years, you'd be paying $315 for the year for all of MiSCA. Again, that doesn't include the team fees or anything like that, but that would be your annual fee in all 6 races. For middle school, you'd be paying $255 for the year, and elementary is $195. The annual fee will be going up by $15, and the first year discount, I don't want to use the word hit, but we gave a lot of first year discounts this year. And what we saw in general was that a lot of people signed up for the annual and they did 1 or 2 races, and they were doing races that were kind of close to where they live. And that was one of the issues of having the race series so spread out, is that, that's just what worked for a lot of people. The other thing that happened is we had like a lot of teams or people come in from outside of MiSCA, and it was their first time ever doing anything with MiSCA. So that whole team or that whole group gets a first year discount, and then they were only doing like 1 race to try it out and to see if they liked it, which is good for bringing new blood in. But it also it kind of skews the results to not having the participation that we were looking for, number wise. So race registration fees, the way that it's going to work is when you see it, it's going to look like a really big number, because the regular price for a race is being doubled. So I'll throw out a number, right? Well, let's use high school, because it's going to be the biggest number, right? So the regular price for high school is normally $40. That's what it was last year. And if you signed up early, you got it for $30. And if you signed up for the whole series, it was still $30 per race, but you got a free t-shirt. That's what last year or this year looked like. And then next year, what it will look like is, instead of $40 being the regular price, it's going to be $80. And again, I know that's a big number, and it's not what we expect most people to pay. So it'd be $80 to start. If you sign up before August 1st for any of the races, so all the races will have an August 1st deadline to get the early bird pricing. If you sign up before August 1st, then it's $20 off per race that you sign up for. So that would take it down to $60. $60 is still a little bit much. I personally, because I'm like, stuck on it being trying to keep things less expensive as we can. So this is really why the price looks like double, is because there's the new series pass discount. So instead of just getting a free t-shirt for the series, which I think the shirt still might be a free thing that you get for doing the full series, you're also going to get half off. So basically, if you're going to do 3 races, you might as well do all 6, because it's going to be the same price. And the way that that's going to work is, if you sign up for all 6 races before August 1st, then if you're a high school racer, they would be $40 each, right? So instead of 80, it would be 40 each. So that's how the price doesn't go up. The price is not doubling year over year for people who are, doing all 6 races and or sign up early for the races. They're not going to see their actual cost to MiSCA double. People who could see their price double would be someone only doing 1 race, or maybe doing only 2 races or something like that. And the idea here is that we want to incentivize people to do all the races, or at least register for everything. And if it works with their schedule, then great. But it incentivizes them to register early. So before that other thing comes up on their calendar, or if their kid doesn't like mountain biking anymore on September 1st for some reason, and they miss the deadline, then then they're not waiting until the last minute to register. Yeah, I think I explained it okay. But basically, August 1st is the deadline. You want to get all of your race registrations in by August 1st. If you don't, you can still register, but it's going to be quite a bit more money. And if you just want to do 1 or 2 races, you can totally do that. It's just that those costs for a single race will be a little bit more than what they had been in the past. And that's just, again, help us cover costs. And we want people to be able to do 1 race. But for those that are really just there to try out one, or are only doing the ones that are really close to their house and they don't really care about the series, then that's okay. Then it's just going to cost a little bit more per race for those people. And their total cost to MiSCA probably won't be more than somebody doing 6 races, but they'll be getting less races. Okay, I quickly want to turn over to Kurt to talk about MiSCA Devo. Kurt, are you out there?
Yep, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
And maybe see me. I'm not sure. I turned my camera on, but I can't see myself. There we go. Hi, thanks. Yeah, so Brian Miller and I have been planning this for, I think, most of the season and a little bit before this season. But this is we'll call it Devo version 2, right? So we're going to give this another go. And it's a focus of 10 to 12 athletes, 8th through 11th grade. And you can read our mission there, but it's focused on personalized training, right? Everything from strength, conditioning skills, race guidance, all the things that an athlete that wants to go beyond the high school, perform nationally, ride for colleges, things like that, we have more and more kids, I think, every year that aspire to do that. So that's the focus. Also focused at accommodating the teams so that the kids' programs align with whatever their team practices are, so they can feel like they're part of the team. And then when they compete nationally, regionally, they can identify with the greater MiSCA organization. I think that covers everything I wanted to say, Sean, but I'm
Awesome.
sure there'll be lots of questions. We're going to try and get the application going here as soon as we can. Get some publicity out so everybody gets the link, and we'll go from there.
Yep. Thank you, Kurt. I think where Kurt and Brian are picking up is where the program, I think, was originally meant, what it was meant to do. We kind of launched it in COVID year, and then didn't really maintain it very well the year following, which was still a weird COVID year. And then this year we kind of didn't do it at all. So we're revamping it up and trying to relaunch it in a way that we think will be successful, and we think that people actually want. All right, moving on to the 2023 calendar, which I know is why everybody is here. to be the first to know, so you can get out and book your campsites and your hotels. And for that, I'm going to hand it over to Sarah, and I might still chime in, and that's nothing against Sarah, but there might be feedback from survey results that I just want to pinpoint, like what we're doing at a certain venue to solve a challenge that we found. But I'll let Sarah go ahead and take over.
Sure. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep, it sounds good, Sarah.
Thank you. All right. So let's just get to it. So Sean's gonna have to page through for me. So we're gonna kick off next year with our road trip to Raise. This is a fundraising trip for us, which we've been doing for the past several years. Registration is gonna open in CCN probably Monday, but Your pass will include a day pass to Ray's Indoor Mountain Bike Park, lunch, and some MiSCA specific swag. If you haven't been there before, if you look up Ray's Mountain Bike Park on YouTube, you can kind of see what it looks like, but it's a lot of wooden structures. There's a little bit of something for every skill level, as well as, it's just a nice way to get out and ride, as we're all kind of itching to get out on the trails. The park does offer bike rentals. Those are first come, first serve. We do not manage those, so you will have to call the park to reserve them. Those go pretty quick, especially on a day where MiSCA is basically taking over the facility. So if you think you're going to want to rent a bike, I would do that sooner rather than later. They do offer helmet rentals if you want to do that. It's just a thing that they do offer. So keep an eye out for that. Looking forward to going again. It's a lot of fun. And if you do have any questions because you've never been there before, there's plenty of folks that have. And even if you show up and you want to kind of get the lay of the land, you can probably buddy up with someone who's been there before from MiSCA, and we'd be happy to give you a quick tour. So just come on out. It's a good day. So hope to see you guys there. And all proceeds from this that don't get spent on the event go towards MiSCA. So, all right. So moving on to the race calendar. So we are going back to Owassipee for race 1. So I know that this is a far venue, but we did get some feedback that said going there for the first race of the year would make things a little easier. Now, some people are already back in school, but there's a good chunk of people that are not. So the hope is that, this will make things a little simpler. We are working to address some of the course concerns with sand. I will say that it's tough to find and many trails in West Michigan that don't have a lot of sand. I know and some of the machine built trails get around it, but that is just something that we have to deal with out there. We will work to kind of reduce the advanced loop so that it's not so long. So we will try to address, as we get the data, it makes it easier for us to address, especially after we've done it. So, and also remember that the Scout Reservation, they do shut down to the public for their scouting program from about mid-June to about August 1st. We will announce those dates once they become official to us. We are looking forward to going back because they are so accommodating and just wonderful to work with. And they really want us there and they really support our mission. So we're happy to partner with them. We will resume the on-site camping and cabin rental. The campsites are large, very nice group sites that, usually worked out a team would reserve a site. So just know that pets, alcohol, and camping trailers are prohibited. So this is tent camping. Every campsite has its own bathroom facility. So you have flush toilets, showers. It's actually pretty nice. I know that the cabins kind of leave something to be desired, but it's a pretty simple accommodation. So if this isn't your thing, there are some nearby campgrounds. If you like the state park thing, the Muskegon State Park is a half-hour away, but because we are not till Labor Day yet, this can fill up pretty quick. So now so get your lodging before it fills up. Okay. So then we get a weekend off for Labor Day, and we are going back to Addison. So we took off from Addison last year after we just had some safety concerns that we wanted to address. We had some incidents that made us just want to step back and take a beat and just figure out how we can improve our course there. And so much credit to Lisa Letzner. She's always looking for ways to improve. So what we're going to do is we have an agreement with the park that we will be bypassing that double hump that we've had some pretty serious injuries on towards the end of the course. So that's a big deal to us. The other thing is we're going to reroute the start to avoid that two-way traffic on the bridge that often creates a lot of congestion for the start. It's a pain to mark, but also it just makes for a very congested bit of traffic. So if you're familiar with like the winter fat bike loop out there, it'll be similar to that start. And so we'll try to release those maps as soon as possible so you can see what we're talking about. But we think it's a much bigger improvement to the course. For lodging, cabins and camping on site are available. You reserve that through the Oakland County website. There are cabins and yurts available as well as some larger group sites. Again, you will do that through the websites. I will say Owassapee is the only is the only facility where we are handling registration for campsites on site. Everything else you have to reserve yourself. We don't do room blocks or anything. If camping isn't your thing and you want a hotel, you can stay in the Auburn Hills area. There's usually a lot of options there. So, all right. And then after that, we are going back to Merrill. We're happy to come back. We had some concerns that some of our course was going to be turned into a jump line and it was effectively going to keep us from returning. But after having some talks with the WMMBA, we found that we will have a way to bypass it. In general, we do avoid jump lines on our race courses. They are not safe for for racing. They also just don't work well when there's any trail congestion. So that's why we avoided Winalda. And that's part of why we had to add some of that grass loop. So in general, I know that jump lines are fun to ride, but we will not be racing on them. So thankfully we will have some course adjustments for that, but you will have to await the map to get the official route there as construction happens. And thankfully we have much more of a warning this time than we did last year. So there's no on-site camping. The closest campground is Wabassis Lake, as well as plenty of nearby hotels in the Grand Rapids area. I will warn you that this is the opening weekend of Art Prize, so hotels might be a little bit more expensive and might be harder to come by. I mean, there's plenty available, but again, this is probably not something that you want to sleep on if you're planning to be there. Okay, and we're going back to Heritage Park. This is just a venue that really bends over backwards for us. It has everything we could possibly need. It has, it has a great course that's unique enough that we feel it's worth the drive. It has parking, which is always great. And again, we just really love working with this venue. We don't anticipate many adjustments to the course. Thankfully, Todd Bloomerick, the trail coordinator, is incredibly involved and always keeps us posted if there's any changes. But we anticipate the trail will be in great shape for this. For lodging, camping is extremely limited, so you'll want to try and find a hotel in Adrian if you're planning to stay in the area. The good thing about this date is that we will be avoiding homecoming weekend, which made lodging kind of hard to come by at the last race there. So hopefully that'll be a little bit better. All right, and then the next week we have off. So September 30th, October 1st is our bye week. And then we are returning to Novi Lakeshore Park, and we will be addressing some of the concerns that we certainly felt ourselves. First of all, parking, we're working to potentially look into some solutions for having a dedicated parking crew, potentially a shuttle service if we feel that's going to be necessary. We also hope with having it not be the last race of the year that will alleviate people inviting everyone they've ever met to drive separately, which seemed to happen at the race this past season. So the advanced course, we will shorten it just because those times did end up being so long. We are looking to adjust the beginner course because we did have a lot of issues with spectators being on the trail because that was the actual race course, because that was the only way for them to get around. It became quite a problem. So we're going to try and reroute things so that we can ease that issue a bit. And then as far as lodging goes, there are some camping options in the Milford area. So there's Proud Lake, there's Camp Dearborn, and then plenty of hotel options in Novi. And then our exciting announcement is our last race of the year, our series finale, which will be at Stony Creek. So you can thank the Metro Parks for really being persistent in trying to make this work for us. We'll be riding the new Sheldon trails that we have out there. And again, I can't say enough about what Lisa has done to make a course that we feel is safe. This is a trail that has a lot of jump lines, a lot of flow, but she did a great job of utilizing enough two-track and enough of the new trail to still make it interesting. And we're really happy with how it's going to look. This will be the return of the coaches race, but we're going to change it up and do a bit of a twilight race. This will be Saturday evening after all our races have happened on Saturday. And we will likely bring back the chaos that was the mini bike race, but maybe try to make it a little bit more organized. But still, it'll be a lot of fun. So keep an eye out for that map. As far as lodging goes, again, your closest camping option is going to be at Addison Oaks. Hotels in Utica and Shelby Township will likely be the way to go for this one. So, so yeah, I think, Sean, do you have anything to add?
Nope, I just had the slide with one slide with the full schedule on it, so you can take your screenshots. And we'll publish it probably on Facebook tonight, and then I'll have to work on the websites and stuff like that to get everything published. But as of now, it's the official schedule. So feel free to make your plans accordingly. We try not to publish the race schedule too early. Even though it's in the works, and it's a good thing we didn't, because we had one venue that we thought would work and it didn't end up working. And then Heritage Park, we had it booked on the weekend that was their homecoming again. Somehow we were like a magnet to their homecoming weekend. And so we moved that, which then we had to shuffle everything around. And so if we would have published it early, you guys would have all been mad at us, because you would have had hotel reservations you had to go change and cancel plans and all that. So we do try to wait until things are solid to publish the schedule. They're solid now. We have.
I interrupt you. So it's 14th and 15th for Stony Creek.
Oh.
So just before you
Yeah, don't
release this
screenshot it.
to the masses. Yeah, don't screenshot it yet.
14, 15, huh? Are the other dates right? Just making sure. Looks right.
Yeah, look good.
Yeah. Did it change in real time? Look at that. Okay, cool. Updated now. Now it's correct. Now they're solid. Now the schedule is solid. Thank you, Sarah. Those are my fat fingers. Okay. Let's see. I think that's the last slide, really. Oh. Okay, so yeah, so then that's the last slide of content to deliver for tonight. Thank you guys all for attending. This is the question and answer slide. So if you have questions, now's the time to ask them. You can use the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and talk out loud. That's cool too. If you have any other questions you don't want to maybe do it on here, you can email me at swarren@miscabike.org. If it's a registration related question, then you'll email Sarah. We have a box for that. It's called registration@miscabike.org. And if you want to welcome Xandra to the position, you can email her as well, zinman@miscabike.org. But yeah, so now we'll open it up for questions. If anybody had anything else to discuss, or just comments is okay too. There's one question about any word on getting high schools to recognize MiSCA as a sport for gym credit. I don't know if I've heard about it for gym credit particularly, but there are a lot of schools that do recognize MiSCA or the mountain bike series as part of their athletics, even if they don't have a team at their school. So you might want to look into your school of what the requirements are to get a varsity letter or something like that. And participation in outside sports could qualify for that. Schools that definitely have that program are ones that have a scholastic team. But a lot of ones that don't as well have it. So like Brighton obviously does, Lake Orion, Huron Valley, and Northville are like I think that might be the 4 scholastic teams that are like for sure. It's a varsity, maybe a varsity program, like an athletics, like under the athletic director, but for sure that they recognize it as a club and they varsity letter. Other schools like Rochester, all 3 of the schools in Rochester district recognize it. And there are a lot of other schools as well. Like there's a few schools that go to Brighton because they don't have a team in their school. And I think Howell and maybe Pinckney. I'm not sure if Pinckney recognizes it, but I believe Howell does. So depending on where you're at, generally you can get recognized. I think some of the Coyotes schools have recognition as well. Okay.
Sean, I might be able to speak to that a little bit.
Sure.
We go to a charter school and it was offered to us. So it might just be a discussion to have with the athletic director or a counselor or something, because we didn't even bring it up, but somebody brought it to our attention. Maybe, you know, that can be something that the conversation starts this year, but you might have to do it, you know, parents are going to have to do it themselves probably.
And if Karen, you mentioned you're with Rochester, it sounded like, so if Karen reaches out to me, maybe if we have to fill out some paperwork or try to figure out something to make it count, but I'm sure she's probably on top of it because she's super detailed and is really pushing Rochester forward. Somebody did ask if there would be a time trial this year, and no, there's no plan for a time trial. It's they're all planned to be mass start. Obviously that could change or something could change, but right now we're not planning any time trials for next year. Yes, middle school and high school will still race on Sunday like they did for 2022. So all elementary will be on Saturday, and then all middle school and high school categories will be on Sunday. We did have riders that were elementary that raced up into middle school, and that is allowed. Obviously you can't race down, so you can't have middle schoolers racing in an elementary category, but if you're a maybe like an upper elementary rider that wants to race in 6th grade, you can do that if you need to, or if you just want to, you can do that as well. I'm just reading through any other questions while I'm reading through the chat? There was a question on growing varsity girls. Do you want to talk about that at all, Sarah? I don't put you on the spot.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I mean, as far as growing the category specifically, I mean, that really starts with female rider retention. So what we found happened for, you know, a while, I will say this is probably the, this year, I feel like we've had the most successful varsity girls category we've ever had, because we have girls that have stayed in the sport throughout, you know, for several years, and now they're aging up into varsity through age and skill level. And so programs like Brave are hopefully there to keep girls around longer, and so that they get the experience to eventually work their way into varsity. We hope that programs like Devo can help trickle down some curriculum that we can hand down as far as getting more of our girls ready to race varsity. We also will be working with, we also want to try and educate our coaches more so that we can get girls as healthy and happy as possible. So one cool thing we have coming up is Adams Sports Medicine is going to work with us to do a discussion on female health and endurance sports, talk about issues like REDS and things that are specific to female athletes, just so we know that we're taking care and understand the differences with our female riders. So as long as I feel that if we give them the attention that they deserve to let them grow and thrive, then we will grow the category. But it can't be forcing girls into varsity for points. Those varsity races are no joke, they're hard. So I would hate to see folks putting girls in varsity just for the sake of getting points. You know, we have to make sure that we're putting them there because either they want the challenge, they want to be there, and they're physically ready. So those are things that we're always thinking about. I'm always thinking about how to grow not just our entire female population, but, you know, how do we make sure our girls who really want to move up in the sport, you know, they have the space to do so, as well as the resources that they need. So that's always an ongoing process that we want to try to improve. So it's going to take a lot of different, you know, different approaches. And we always want feedback, especially from the girls themselves. They are just as much a part of this as we are. So without their feedback, we don't get better. So that's always an open conversation if anyone ever has ideas. So. And there was a question about the Adams. Will the Adams sports info on females be targeted to coaches? Will only be at the athlete level. So we are actually planning to bring this out to coaches and parents. We also want parents to understand what their own athletes are going through. So, and this was Dr. Hannah DePaul with Adams, this was her suggestion, and she really wants to make sure that as many people as possible have this information. But we will also make this a coach module, more than likely.
Yeah, one thing that we're looking to do is start to take content that people have developed or have worked on, and that could be around the country, and then sharing that with our coaches as well. So to have some continuing education that isn't just about mountain bike skills, because right now that's really the breadth of our education that we have for our coaches is around skills. So we do acknowledge that we need to address some risk management stuff, as well as other aspects of the sport that certain coaches may find interesting or might want to grab onto and own that thing for their team. And we can provide that content for everybody. And then you can kind of pick and choose what things you might want to do. It won't all be required necessarily for everybody, but it'll be available. So that way, again, maybe one or two people on a team can champion that cause for their team, and help the other coaches understand what's important about those things as well. All right. I don't see any more questions. Anybody have anything else before we end?
I will say I'm sure there will be questions of why don't we go to this venue or that venue. So and Rich Meyer can probably tell you that if you ask me, you're going to get a PhD level dissertation on why we go to certain venues. So that's a discussion that we can have offline. There's just so much that goes into picking venues, and it's not just this trail looks nice, I'd love to have a race here. There's just so much to factor into it, as well as making sure that we can do our jobs the way that we need to at a venue. So if anyone has concerns or issues, I'm always open to talking about it. So.
Yeah, generally the first two things that will disqualify a cool trail or a nice trail system from being a MiSCA trail is parking. So if you get to the trail and you think, where would you fit 500 cars here? If you can't fit 500 cars, then it's probably not going to work for a race venue. The next one is having a really big wide open field for doing start and finish. A lot of places don't have a soccer field or two soccer fields that we can use for that, or a football field. Or something like that. So those are two things that we have to have at every race. We have to have parking, we have to have somewhere to stage and have our team tents and whatnot. And then from there, road crossings, having a course that works for elementary and works for high school. Those things all have to get balanced out, as well as having it be, in a geographic area that we want to be in to serve our population the best. There's a lot of factors that go into it. But yeah, so the first prerequisites, though, it's always parking and a huge field. Those are the two things it has to have. And then the other things we can see if we can make them work or not. But feel free to always send them to us. I know that there's new trail systems that come up or they're being developed. And I know we're looking at a few on the west side of the state to diversify our trails that we can go to out there. So. Awesome. Okay. Thank you guys all for coming tonight, and look for any other updates. Of course, we will have coaches welcome to MiSCA, what changes for 2023 call in probably February, like we usually do. And then we'll have a general welcome to MiSCA for parents and coaches and athletes that want to log into that, probably in late March, April timeframe. And that's where we usually cover like rules changes. We'll cover the venues again a little bit, maybe more in and just the general, welcome to MiSCA. This is what's up, and this is why we're all here and what the goals are, so that we're all on the same page for the year. But with that, I'll close it out. Thanks everyone for attending, and we'll see you, if not in person at Raise, we'll see you online on Facebook or via my email if you have any questions. Thank you.